Oh, we're recording. Okay. So welcome, guys. We are doing the video today on what it's like to be in a relationship with someone with ADHD. I'm the one with ADHD. My name is Mandy, and I am diagnosed ADHD hyperactive. And this is my neurotypical husband. His name is Ian, and he's joining us today to talk about the subject. So this was a discussion in our Facebook group, and I got some feedback from people on issues and things we could talk about. So what we're going to discuss is the good and the bad of living with someone with ADHD, and we're going to talk about ways it's hard to live with a neurotypical person. There's also good things. I skipped that the first time. We've had to do this video once already because I think this guy was shy and he was really quiet. So we had to do it again. And so the first subject is impulsive spending. And would you like to go first on impulsive spending?
I don't know. I think in the beginning when we first got married, we both had issues with this.
Yeah. It wasn't really an ADHD thing. It was just a immature thing. But I would say even we figured that out. But it is a problem for a lot of people with ADHD just because of the impulsivity. And they will go and shop too much or buy things to get that hit of dopamine. So we kind of do bad things and good things here in between. So a good thing is creativity. And this was actually one that he had brought up.
Yeah.
Do you want to say something about that?
She always has like ideas about the house or about projects or the gym or businesses, things that can make things better or try something new, things like that.
And that can be good and bad, right? Because it actually gives him a lot of projects. So I would say a negative is cleaning. And I find in the Facebook groups where I'm in the groups with like lots and lots of people that cleaning is a problem for a lot of people. It can go both ways. There are some people that are just so concerned about cleaning that they're almost neat freaks. Those are very few. Mostly people are struggling with cleaning because it's a multi-step situation and it requires planning and it requires follow through and initiation and all the things that we struggle with. Plus he wants to clean. But we had told the story the first time about how kind of early in our marriage, I had suggested hiring a cleaning lady. And what did you think about that?
We don't need a stinking cleaning lady. Well, I thought.
We totally have a cleaning lady now. He just thought it was like morally wrong, and we couldn't afford it at the time. But that wasn't even his point. His point was that somebody else shouldn't come in and clean our house, and so he's really
50-50.
Come around on that one. A bad that we're talking about is emotional dysregulation, and I would say that's mostly on my side. That is on my side. Where if I would get mad, I would get like extra mad. I wouldn't really be able to control my anger, or if I felt hurt, it was always like intensified. It was extra. I would have a hard time controlling my emotions. You can talk anytime you want.
You're doing a good job. I don't know what else to say.
So, well, I mean, what was your perspective on that?
I don't know. I don't know if we had, I don't know what to compare it to, because I don't know if other people had less fights than we did, or, I don't know. You're the only woman I've been married to, so I don't have anything else to compare it to.
Well, and speaking of fights, not only having to do with the ADHD, but then you have the dynamics of like different families and stuff like that, where he thought if we fought, something went terribly wrong and everybody's going to die. Whereas I was like, we're mad and we got in a fight. It's not really a big deal. It was a big difference between those two things. But if you have an ADHD partner, and they are just like blowing their top, or they're getting extra hurt when you say things, or they're just having a lot of trouble handling their emotions, just take into consideration that it may not be their fault. And especially if they're untreated, you might want to look into getting them some treatment, and coaching really helps with that, like dealing with your emotions. I am an ADHD coach, and then I have gone through certification for general life coaching with or not with ADHD, but general life coaching. And that has done tremendous things as far as like handling my emotions. And like, even though before that, just out of maturity, I had started handling my emotions a little bit better.
Right.
With coaching, now I'm thinking enough to like give him the benefit of the doubt. That's a really gross story, but we had a dead chicken in our chicken coop, and I don't like.
It's like, where are you going with this?
I don't like handling dead animals, and so I asked him to do it.
So that's where all the projects, I get to do all the fun stuff.
So it got really hot, and a chicken died, and it was in the nest box, and I asked him to deal with it like when he went to work, and I went to collect eggs, and it looked as though he had just pushed the chicken out of the nest box onto the floor of the chicken coop. And normally I would have called and I would have been like, what the heck? Like, why did you not take the chicken? Why did you just push it into the coop? But I was like, instead now, like with the perspective that I have with coaching, I just thought, well, that's weird. He must have had a good reason for that.
And there's that chicken on the floor.
And I just let it go. And when he got home, I said, why did you push the dead chicken onto the floor instead of taking it out? And he's like, what are you talking about? I took the chicken. And so it turned out that another chicken that looked identical to the other one, which is a miracle because we actually have a mix of chickens. And so for the same breed to die, I guess that breed just can't handle the heat. But this is not a video about chickens. That's just a funny story about how like
ADHD.
things are handled differently since coaching. So rejection sensitive dysphoria, RSD. A lot of people are talking about this. It's actually kind of a new thing. There's a certain doctor, I believe, that has kind of coined this, and I have the definition right here. It is extreme emotional sensitivity and pain triggered by the perception that a person has been rejected or criticized by important people in their life. It may be triggered by a sense of falling short, failing to meet their own high standards or others' expectations. And we know people that deal with this. I know people in my coaching group on Facebook are concerned about this, former clients. And yeah, it's just something new that people are kind of looking at. So if that sounds like you, there's the definition, and it could be something going on for you. The next thing is spouse doesn't believe that you have ADHD. That was something, I don't know if it was discussed in the group, but it's something that I've heard a lot. It happens in relationships quite a bit where one spouse, and it's not always the husband, I'm sure. It's just that the groups I'm in are a lot of women. And so one spouse or the other thinks that the other partner is just being lazy, or they're just not trying hard enough. Or I even heard one the other day where he thought that her ADHD medication was actually the problem. So what do you have to say about that as far as like believing it's a thing?
I can see why people would think that, because our daughter has ADHD too, okay? And so these two, when they're in the kitchen or doing anything, it's like they leave stuff everywhere or forget to pick something up, or they take this pen and drop it in the next room. And so I can see why, like people would think that you're not cleaning up or you're lazy or whatever, but it's just because your attention's everywhere, and so you forget what you're doing, just like the chicken story. And
I knew exactly where I was going with that.
But then so some things get missed or not finished or whatever, you know what I mean?
Well, to that subject, I've had to do a lot of education with you and with some of my clients that these kids that have ADHD are not being messy on purpose. They're not leaving things out on purpose. They're not leaving rooms a mess on purpose. I don't think there's been one time that I've reminded my daughter that she needed to go pick something up that she was huffy about it um, or even seemed like she had any idea that it happened. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, like, or forgets totally, like, and like you said, unless you give them a list or something to follow. Like,
that's a good thing.
You give them, she tell her, go put your clothes away, then pick up your floor and hang up your clothes.
You can't do that.
And so, like, she'll do the first one or the last one, but the other ones get skipped over somehow. You know, that's where their focus went. And so then they're like, oh, I'm done. And they go off.
My experience is kids with ADHD can only have one instruction at a time. I haven't written things down on a list very often, mostly like if we're going out of town and I'm asking her to pack things, I will make a list. And even then I have to kind of babysit the list. I have to go back and kind of check and ask and make sure that those things were done. If you have a child with ADHD, if you have a spouse with ADHD, you likely have a child with ADHD. Sorry, I'm having a hard time getting that out. You cannot give them 3 instructions and expect those instructions to be followed. It's just unreasonable. It's better with adults, I would say. Even then, it's kind of iffy. But with children especially, if you give them 3 instructions and then get mad that they didn't do all 3 things, you're kind of the one with the problem, because you're always going to be in that situation. You're always going to be getting mad at them because they're never going to remember all 3 things you asked them to do.
Well, and that's where, like with your coaching, like you teach them like how to be better at that. You know what I mean? Like with your calendaring or making your own list and stuff. So you keep track of, okay, I'm supposed to be doing this now and then this then and the other thing later. But something for you to refer to that remind yourself what you're supposed to be doing.
Right. He's talking about the time management program that we do. And yeah. How does that pertain to the kids though?
Well, you can start teaching them.
True. Yeah.
How to do that.
Yeah. And I mean, you could have your kid put a list on their phone. You could text them a list. You could do Trello where they can click little boxes. You could have Post-its. You could have them do like a Google Calendar. There's lots of options, but just understand that if you're a non-ADHD spouse watching this, and you have children, you probably have 1 or 2 with ADHD. And if you're running into these problems, just know that that's what's going on. Once you know, it's a lot easier to deal with, I think. It seems disrespectful at first. It seems like they just went in the kitchen and like destroyed it. And then you realize, or leave the cabinets all open, or yeah, there's lots of different things. So follow through. You want to say anything about follow through?
I guess it kind of goes along with what we're talking about right now. You know what I mean? Like you go do one thing and you end up doing 5 others and missing that one, or doing a bunch of things and not following through and finishing what you intended to do in the first place, you know?
Well, and it's not only that, it's like big things, like follow through as far as taking college classes, or follow through as far as doing that course that you bought, or follow through as far as like what are other like regular everyday things. Like maybe you bought all the stuff.
Brush your teeth, take your vitamins.
I brush my teeth.
Well, yeah.
Take my vitamins is terrible. I can't. I'm trying. I'm really trying.
Didn't mean that you didn't brush your teeth. I'm saying some people, you know.
Some people do struggle with brushing their teeth and taking a shower and things like that. Absolutely, that is true. That is actually a huge problem for a lot of people. I more have an anxiety if I don't brush my teeth, like they're all going to fall out. And so
bad dreams.
That's maybe if you're having trouble brushing your teeth, then you can borrow my anxiety. Probably not the best thing to do. But follow through as far as like, I was going to give an example of what I've got. I have all the things to do microgreens. Yeah, we have never eaten microgreens at all. Like it's all on a shelf. But to be fair, I started a coaching certification and then I started a coaching business. And so there just hasn't been a lot of time for microgreens. But I could schedule it into my calendar. It's something I could do. I just don't feel ready to go down that rabbit hole right now. But the first time what we talked about is my coaching certification was not cheap. And it was a commitment. And that's what we discussed the first time was like, how was that for you to put up that much money and hope that I follow through with it?
Well, I think we talked about this first time, if I remember right.
They don't remember the first time though.
Before, she'd done a lot of things and not finished them, whether it's projects or stuff she signed up for or whatever.
Went to 3 or 4 colleges.
But she had just recently made a commitment and finished what's called the Pathways program to finish her degree. And she was committed. She had to drive out of town for that every day.
Not every day. Every Thursday. And it was
a couple times a week anyway.
2.5 hours one way and 2.5 hours home.
Right. And so she did it and she got through that. And like I told you last time, I think that gave me more confidence that you would follow through with this. And also that I could tell that you really enjoyed coaching and that kind of thing. And so it was easier for me to give you go ahead. Whereas, 3, 4, 5 years ago, maybe not so easy. You know what I'm saying? So
I think 3, 4, 5 years ago, I would have quit because it was hard, but I was committed to it. So attention span and focus. We talked about what it's like to watch a movie with somebody. And I actually have a friend and somebody that I coach that is also ADHD and hyperactive. And watching a movie with us is not very much fun. Do you want to talk about that?
It's like you're not watching the movie.
We're watching it.
And what she's talking about is her and her friend and her husband were supposed to be watching a movie. And
I'm not talking about that specific instance where we were texting on 2 different platforms.
On Facebook and texting each other while she's supposed to be watching this movie.
No, but like, what is it like to watch a movie? Like,
well, you can't. You're basically. They're in and out of the room. They go get something to eat, or they go get their phone or the computer to work on stuff while we're watching the movie. Or it's not. They just can't sit there and cuddle and watch the movie.
No.
No cuddling.
I cuddle. Just not for very long. And then this one loves movies in the movie theater. I hate movies in the movie theater. Like I have to be into the show. Like I have to be a part of the movie or I'm on my phone feeling tortured in the movie theater. It's too long to sit. Church is difficult. It's too long to sit. Anything where you have to sit for very long is really hard. So if you have somebody in your life that's hyperactive, that is just difficult for them. But focus, inattentive people. So just so everybody is on the same page, you're either predominantly hyperactive or you're predominantly inattentive or you're combined. And there's some wiggle room there because notice the word predominantly. You're mostly that, but you're not all one or the other. Like you have different traits, but the inattentive people tend to have a harder time focusing. They'll more daydream. So if you were watching a movie with them, they'll be sitting there with you and they'd be completely comfortable, but their mind would be somewhere else and they wouldn't be following the movie. Whereas the hyperactives, and I think this is fair to say, if any inattentives want to tell me in the comments that I'm wrong, feel free. But with the inattentives that I have coached, the perception that I've gotten is that they could sit on the couch, they could watch the movie, they could be there cuddling, but their mind has gone somewhere else and they have no idea what's going on with the movie. Whereas what's interesting is with the hyperactives, our attention is kind of everywhere. And so we understand exactly what's going on in the movie, but we're also working on a project on the computer and checking our phone and just a lot of places. And so that's kind of the difference. That's where they talk about, like, they say attention deficit, but I would say both for hyperactives and inattentives, it's not a deficit of attention. It's
just not focused in the right places.
It's an abundance of attention. And so it's spread too thin.
Too much attention?
Like an example of that would be when we're in a restaurant. What happens when we're in a restaurant?
She's listening to everybody else, except me.
That may be true some of the time. If I get like really into another conversation that's going on,
she's like, shh.
And I'm sure this is like completely rude and I'm calling myself out on it, but I can't help it. Like I can hear everything going on around me. And so I can hear all the different conversations. And so I will be like following them and checking in with them and understand a lot about their lives before we're done with our meal. So it's kind of fun and like rude and probably illegal. Spontaneity was a positive that this guy gave. And how would you explain that?
I guess, I don't know, I thought we talked a little bit about this earlier, but spontaneity, like always looking for new things to do, to explore, to find out, to go places, that kind of stuff, always wanting a new adventure.
Well, and the reason for that, and I would love an inattentive person here to chime in on this, but with hyperactives, they get very restless. And so if I notice not so much now that I'm medicated, I'm on a non-stimulant medication. It's not as bad now, but it still is a thing. But if I would go a month, 2 months without going somewhere new, I start kind of losing it. Like I start getting really upset. I start feeling bad, and I just need to go. And so lots of car trips, lots of trying out new places, going new places. I just have to go, and it's just that restlessness that happens. The next one is cognitive flexibility. I was reading a book and they were talking about cognitive flexibility, and I believe it was Brain Hacks. It's not on my shelf right now. But the book is Brain Hacks, and she was saying actually that people not liking surprises is an example of cognitive inflexibility. And so that was really interesting. I actually posted that in a group and people were very surprised by that. It got like a lot of response. And that is true in our relationship. Like I really don't like to be surprised.
So like she's like Inspector Clouseau or whatever, or what are you going to call it? Sherlock Holmes.
It is not my fault you're not stinky.
No matter what I do, like I think I may have surprised her once or twice over all the years we've been married. They're nosy.
I'm not trying to find stuff out. He's just doing very good at hiding things.
Oh.
So there's the cognitive flexibility. It also has to do with we are talking about remodeling our bathroom, and I was at my computer working, and he came in the room and wanted to talk about the vanity in the bathroom. And then he wanted to talk about the floor color, and then he wanted to talk about the color the countertop should be. And I just could not transition. I was doing what I was doing, and I had to like stop him and say, I can't do that right now. I'm doing this. And so, whereas I would think like more of a neurotypical person, you're a neurotypical person. Like if I came in the room and started talking about that, names. how would you react? Like what would you do?
Well, I mean, if I could, I probably would have stopped or paused or whatever I was doing and listen, talk to you about it, whatever, and then went back to it.
Right. Whereas if you're not the ADHD person watching this video, when we are focused on something finally,
they're hyper-focused.
We don't want to be taken away from that. It is very hard to get back to it. And I couldn't transition like that. And so I had to, there's many times that in our relationship, I have to just stop. I can't talk about that right now. Like my mind is not there. What? It's so funny. It's true. Yeah. So that's just some examples of it. One good thing that he gave was curiosity. Always trying to learn, always trying to ask questions, always interested in pretty much everything. Yeah. Any comments on that?
No, you covered it. Just, like you always want to know the answers to stuff. And so.
One example that I gave, I am full of useless information, is we were touring a walnut farm with a friend of ours, and there was pistachio trees, and I wanted to know all these details about the pistachio trees, and it's the first time I've ever seen a pistachio tree, and I'll probably never see one again. Like there was no reason to have to know all these things, but I'm just super curious about everything. So a bad one is probably time awareness. You want to talk about that one? You did a good job in the video before. Yeah.
Okay. So time awareness. You're going to be late. Because they're not aware of how much time things take. And it's bad because for me, like, I always want to be early, like 10 minutes, 15 minutes early, make sure we're there on time in case something goes wrong, whatever. And with her, it's like the last minute we show up, like barely making it on time, or excuse me, you don't talk about.
Go ahead.
But since she's become more aware of this and working with her ADHD and stuff, she's doing a lot better job of her time awareness of how long things take. Yeah, you've been timing things and figuring out how stuff works. But yeah, so it's if you're the spouse, it could be. I mean, women already take a long time to get ready, anyways, right? So if they're ADHD, it could even take longer.
They have no concept of how long that's going to take, and I've heard it described, and I've lived it many times, where it's like, oh well, if it's not now, it's not now. And so if you have to be somewhere in 2 hours, that's not now. And then it comes to an hour, and then that's still not now. Like, it's still not urgent. We have a whole hour before we have to be there. And then it comes to 30 minutes, and you still have to shower and get ready and get your makeup on and do your hair and all that kind of stuff. And we just have no concept of how long that takes. And we don't want to do it until it's urgent. And so I think the ADHD people can think of that in many aspects of their life. And where I shook my head no that I'm still not doing good with time awareness is because I will still sit down, even with a calendar, and say, well, I need to do this thing. And this thing in my mind is going to take 10 minutes, but this thing actually ends up taking 45 minutes. And so it's still a challenge. The more you work with a calendar, the more you get used to it. There's also the issue with a lot of people that things are going to take too long. And they actually don't have any awareness of how long they take. I noticed in the ADHD groups, there's a lot of talk about laundry and how terrible it is. And I noticed when I timed how long it took me to fold the laundry, which is really the task that is the most difficult. It takes like 6 to 10 minutes, 15 if it's a really big load. And I think if you asked any of those people how long it took, they'd say half hour.
Hours, probably.
Or because they have already decided in their brains it's going to take forever, they will wait and put all the loads of laundry together and have like 6 loads that now they have to deal with. And yes, of course, 6 loads take a long time. And so there's a lot with time awareness. There's a lot more we could talk about. One thing somebody in the group wanted to talk about was organization. Organization can be a big problem, especially with paperwork. and bills. There's lots of things that can be done about that. Vertical file folders are very good for that. Paper with your bills. There's, I can't remember the name of it right now, object impermanence, whereas if the thing, like this water bottle is in my line of sight, I can see it, it's here, I know it's here. But if it's out of my line of sight, there's no water bottle. Like, kind of that concept. So with your bills, if you start getting them all like digital, like they all want us to do, like go paperless and save and all this kind of stuff, then you don't have that reminder, that paper physical reminder that that bill is going to be due.
And the other thing that you have done is anything that you can put on reoccurring or online payments or something like that, you'll set it up so you don't forget that. And so that also helps. If anything you can set up to go automatically or something.
I automatically pay. I have kind of decided how much we spend on Amazon. That's probably a big thing for most people. Whatever card you might put a lot on, but automatically my bank will pay X amount of money to Amazon every month, no matter what. So it's never late. So I can, if I get the bill and it's more than that amount that I've set to pay, and set that amount to be more than the minimum, obviously. But if it's more than that amount that I set to pay, then I just pay the difference. Or I go ahead and pay the bill, and then we have that credit of that much. And so that's just an offer of something to do too. What do we want to say about planning?
We've kind of covered some of that already also. You know, with your calendaring and...
Planning is difficult. When there's a lot of steps, when there's instructions, if you're an ADHD person in your life, if you guys go to play a board game and you start to read the instructions and they have checked out or they've said, let's just play, there's a reason for that. It's because they cannot deal with all the information that you're giving them at the same time. They can't hold in their brains all that information and remember that those were the rules. And so we just do better playing. Where I see this a lot, and we were just discussing this yesterday, I was talking about maybe doing videos for people that are very simple recipes. Recipes are ridiculous for ADHD people, and I noticed that and it's kind of planning, right? Like you have your ingredients, you have the amounts of your ingredients, you have your instructions, you have to plan in a certain way in order to make this meal happen. But it's unreasonable for ADHD people. And one way I noticed I've adapted is I just memorize recipes. I don't really read the instructions. I look at how long it takes to cook it, or not how long, what temperature I'm supposed to cook it at. I have no idea how long it's supposed to stay in the oven. I just look at it. When it's done, it's done. After a while, I'll just know how to make it, and I don't like looking at the instructions. We're very bad at planning. Trips get stressful because it's very stressful to worry about whether everybody has the things that they need. Planning's very difficult. I feel like we're talking about a lot of things that are kind of planning, but not really. Do you have a better example of that?
No, I mean, that's what it is. Part of your organization skills and all that kind of stuff, you know.
Planning and organization kind of go together. Yeah. So he brought this one up last time. Intimacy.
What?
He kind of said, do you want to talk about sex? And I'm like, I guess we have to now. But do you want to talk about that one?
I guess so. We'll get in trouble.
I know. That's scary. I'm just handing that one over to you.
Right. Well, we should do that. So, like we're talking about before, they have a hard time focusing, right? Just like a movie or something like that. It's evening, you know, time to maybe have some fun. And so she's not focused on the fun. She's reading about, you know, some article about ADHD, or she's looking up stuff for her website, or she's doing something else and can't get her mind focused where it needs to be because she's doing all these other stuff.
Well, and part of that is just the difficulty shutting down in the evenings. Like our brains don't shut down.
Right.
It's like you left your car on the whole time and you left your foot on the pedal. Like that's a good way to explain it, is that's how our brains are going all the time. And so it's very difficult, one, to relax. It's very difficult to sleep, and it's very difficult to just focus.
Right.
Yeah.
But like I said last time, it's also good because, like we talked about before, they're curious, spontaneous, adventurous. So it can be a lot of fun also.
If you can deal with the times we're distracted.
Right.
Well, you could think like somebody could get really offended by that.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you have before. There's been a few times you're mad at me.
Yeah, it's been a couple times.
And so what we talked about, I'm sorry, I keep saying what we talked about the first time. We had to re-record this video, and so we're kind of stuck in the one that you don't even know about. So I talked about how it's not super easy to live with a neurotypical person all the time either. Like, one example of that would be, he would be perfectly happy to come home and just, if he had a chair, I'm sure he would just sit in his chair or sit in his spot on the couch and just watch TV. And that's it. And that would be entertainment to him. Or like maybe play his video game. And that would be our life.
We still go to the gym. I'm sure there's a few other things in there we're not mentioning.
But that would be like, I think every day would be the same. Every day would be,
Probably.
I would be bored. I would be bored out of my mind if that's how we lived our lives. And I know that like you could totally have gone there, but because you've got me like kind of pulling you places, we don't kind of sink into that type of life.
Yep.
Another thing that is difficult is sensitivity to sounds. Some people have like sight sensitivities. I know I deal with that one too. I think that's part of my problem with like Walmart and Costco. There's just too much. It's overwhelming. There's too many things. There's too many people. It's just, I feel like I need like, I don't know. I don't know what I need after those places, but I can't stand them.
Dark room.
Yeah. And with sound sensitivity, like he'll just sneeze or cough or talk on the phone or whistle. Whistling's the worst. And it's just so loud that I can't handle it. And some people are like touch sensitive, where like they don't want anybody to touch them right now. And I think I can do that every once in a while.
Sometimes you get that way.
Yeah. But that happens for some people quite a bit. So the good thing about neurotypical people, they're really good at carrying out the projects that you come up with for them.
Slave labor.
They're really good at like following through on that. And what's interesting is like, just speaking of projects, we're a good team when it comes to projects, because like something will go wrong and we'll like kind of sit there and like rethink the situation and kind of be able to, one of us is going to come up with a way to make it work. They make life simpler and they simplify things. When we get into these multi-step situations, he's able to kind of bring it back down to earth. When we didn't have somebody to clean the house, I would just sit down with him and be like, just tell me what I'm supposed to do. Tell me how I'm supposed to keep this house clean.
Yeah. How would you do it?
Yeah.
And then I said, well, you organize, right? Like you prioritize. And she's like, what's that?
Like it's obvious. And so they make things simple. Another thing is it can be very calming. Their emotions usually aren't all over the place. They're usually pretty chill. He is anyway. I'm sure maybe your spouse might be different.
There's probably a few out there that are calm.
And one that he brought up was reliable. You want to talk about that one?
I don't know. It's, at least from my own opinion or whatever, like, I'm here for you. You know what I mean? Like, whatever it may be, or like saying, like, figuring out a problem, or you get overwhelmed with something, I'm here for you, like, to help you, put the perspective on it that you need to
that just
calm down and stuff.
It made me think of something. So Yesterday, I think was it yesterday? I was at the gym, and I'm not going to go into the subject of what happened, but maybe it was the day before, but something happened and I got mad. And so I call him and I'm like, look, I'm mad. Tell me if I'm being ridiculous
or talk me down.
Yes. And so we talked about it, and it was a ridiculous situation that was happening, and I probably did have some right to be mad, but just discussing it, we were able to, you made a suggestion of like what to do about it, and I did that, and it was fine. And so, but I could like kind of spin out without that help of like bringing me back down. So that's what we have. Continue the conversation in the comments. What issues do you have with your relationships due to ADHD? You can hit the subscribe button and the bell to be told when we come out with the weekly videos. I've decided that these are going to come out every Saturday. So that's what's happening from now on. Been very dedicated, and I will continue to be for years to come. Is my plan on bringing these videos out. If you have ideas for videos, put that in the comments too. You can check out the links in the description to book a coaching call with me. I don't know if we even talked about that. I'm an ADHD life coach. And yeah, you can book a call with me there, and it's a free session, and just see what you think. It's not a hard sell. If you want to check it out, you're going to leave with some sort of tool that's going to help you, or some sort of concept that you hadn't thought of before. And at the end of the call, you decide if you want to work with me or not. It's totally up to you. It's your choice. So just checking my notes here. There will be a link tree in the description where you can see all the places that you can hang out with me. My Instagram is really fun right now. It's a lot of great information, and it's just a fun place to be. And it's Learn to Thrive with ADHD on Instagram. And thanks for being here. And then we will see you next week. All right. Thank you.